What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on? Little mailbag time. At John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. And you guys know the drill. Middlekauff Mailbag. Fire in those DMs. Get your question answered here on the show. We got a lot to answer. We're recording this part before the doubleheader on Monday night. Another back-to-back doubleheaders. Question for the mailbag. Did the Eagles throw the game yesterday? Not in the sense of trying to lose, but they have a bye week next week. They sat everyone that was slightly dinged up. Should us Eagles fans be concerned? Well, some of those guys, right, didn't pass concussion protocol. Lane Johnson, right, did not pass concussion protocol. Devontae Smith, maybe I'm incorrect on this. These guys were not available to play. I think we can look at it two ways. I definitely 1,000,000% did not throw that game. You know, I know that's not what you're asking, but they wanted to win when they showed up to play. And when you have the players they have, I mean, the individuals they have, and they're paying and they've invested to do on the defensive line, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, the offensive line, and your quarterback is making $45 million. I'm sorry, the expectation is to win. And I understand it was super hot and humid and difficult, and you're playing a good team. That team just kicked your ass in a playoff game. I mean, embarrassed you. What was the final score? 32-9? Brandon Graham was there. Jordan Davis was there. Jalen Carter was there. Right? I mean, Jalen Hurts was there. Dallas Goedert was there. That game should have really, Sirianni was there. Should have meant something to the group. And that one's hard to shake, man. I would be concerned. And I think it's hard to overcome weirdness with your head coach. Let's face it. I mean, this constantly going for it, even if the owner is telling him to do it, like the players aren't in on the privy to those conversations. They have to be thinking at times like, can't we just kick a field goal? Can't we just take some points? We're paying our kicker a decent amount of money. He's a good player. And the quarterback is pretty concerning because you talk about he's just a roller coaster player. Among 49er fans, it seems there's a feeling that this might be the last year as a Super Bowl contender. Given that Purdy has emerged as a top 10, 5 question mark quarterback in the NFL, he's been awesome this year. Brock Purdy looks fantastic. And his salary will go up 40x. Well, the way on the salary cap, right? His salary cap hit right now is like $1 million. Even if he signs a $200 million contract, his cap hit next year would be like $10 million. So next year, like its impact on the roster over the next couple years won't be 40x. Jed will be paying him 40, 50x. Actually more because he'll get like a $75 million signing bonus. But the impact on roster building is not as extreme as the actual numbers because the way that they fudged the contract. However, I don't see any way that Shanahan, Purdy, and Lynch are with this organization. I have optimism that they will still be contenders, especially with Lynch nailing late-round picks consistently. Pooney, Lenore, Purdy being recent examples. I think I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, Kyle Shanahan's a high-end coach. If you have a high-end coach and you have a good quarterback, your team should always be good. Now, are they leading in the Super Bowl good? Not saying that. But, like, you should be consistently really good. I mean, it's bottom line. Every year, every fan should expect double-digit wins in the playoffs. You're not going to win the division every year because, I mean, clearly McVay's a high-end coach. The Cards got a long way to go. But we'll find out a lot more about Seattle. These, the 49ers play them on that Thursday night game. My guess is, I mean, maybe I'll sound like an idiot, but I would guess the Lions beat them on Monday night. But even if they don't, like Seattle, Mike McDonald, like they got a lot of players, but their quarterback's a high-end bridge guy. The number one thing Seattle fans ask is like, how do we get a young quarterback? So when I look at the 49ers, it's like You have one of the best coaches in the league. You should always be good. It's your job to figure this out. Like, they're in the business of fielding a good team every year. Are they going to go 1 through 15 as good as they've been? Of course not. But then it's on them, like you said, to hit picks, make moves. You know, that they waffled on the Brandon Ayuk situation. Through a couple weeks, I wonder if they think, like, God, should we have just traded him before the draft with Juwan Jennings emerging? Now, Kittle's getting up there in age. Like, you want Brandon Ayuk in years to come, but who's to say how's Ricky Pearsall going to look? And Debo's value to them is like he can just play running back, right? In the sense of, like, Christian McCaffrey, I think Rap Sheet reported he might not be back till November. What I don't understand, I'm not a medical doctor, but I followed sports long enough. If you have an Achilles injury, to me, I've always thought of it like a tire, that, like, once the tire starts wearing down, it's eventually going to go. And I don't know what you can do to strengthen the Achilles to avoid popping it. Because most guys that have, like, Achilles soreness, and I think we can use two Niners as example. Sherman had that in Seattle. His Achilles popped. Dre Greenlaw had that last year during the season. His Achilles popped. And if his Achilles is eventually going to pop, it's obviously better to have it done the sooner the better. Now, he is going to refuse. Like, the other thing they could do is just cut it and redo it. Like, he's not going to do that. But I think it will be pretty devastating if he comes back late in the season and the Achilles goes, and instead of just getting this out of the way in September, it goes in December, because that's a 3-month swing for rehab for a guy that you just paid money to. Now, who knows? Maybe I'm way off on this, but, like, they're pretty pot committed to McCaffrey. They've given him a lot of money, which is not a crazy thing to do if he's on the field. But right now, he's got to be one of the biggest question marks in the league. Longtime listener, dropping my first ever mailbag question. This is from Brian. Also a Philly fan from Bakersfield, California. No Bakersfield well. Do you put the blame on the injuries, coaching for the egg the Eagles laid yesterday? I know Lane Johnson, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith were out. Wanted your thoughts. I just think you're allowed to lose in the NFL. This sport is really hard, right? Losing to the Bucs on the road in 100-degree humidity by a field goal or by a 5-minute drive at the end of the game, they win on a touchdown, is not that crazy. The team that won the division last year, we're only through 4 weeks, but they got the best record in the division now. And if they were to beat Atlanta on Thursday night, they will have commanding control. And my Saints bet, we're going to have to start digging ourselves out of the hole. But you can't be down 21-0 in the first quarter. And listen, I supported this. I thought it was a good move, but they hired Vic Fangio. And let's face it, and you can say, and I've read this a lot, like, it takes a year for guys to figure it out. Does it? I saw Vic Fangio show up to the 49ers in 2011, and his defense was immediately awesome. Does the personnel fit him? Like, Bryce Huff is not a Vic Fangio guy. He likes his edges to be able to hold up against the run. Like, he's not looking for just like these 4-3 pass rushers that do nothing in run defense. And you saw yesterday, like, I didn't chart it, but it felt like the Bucs were consistently hitting sweeps and getting to the edges. Like, they don't think they can hold the point. So if your defense isn't great, like, we kind of know where Jalen Hurts is now. 2022, a little bit of an outlier, still a good player, but, like, he's not near a top 5 quarterback. So you need the weapons there to help him out. Saquon has been unreal. And you need a good defense. If their defense is going to be bad, this Eagles team has a lot of issues. I mean, it really does. It really does. Teams are missing guys all over the league. The Chiefs just found a way to win 17-10 without their starting running back. Their star tight end looks like me out there right now, even though he played a pretty good game. Mahomes took out their best wide receiver, John Lynch style, accidentally, but probably ruined his season. And it's like, we're just going to win this thing on defense, as they do all the time. And the Eagles can't really play like that because their defense was getting shredded against the Packers, just got shredded that night, or shredded yesterday against Tampa, got shredded when it mattered the most against Atlanta. I would be pretty concerned. A lot of Eagles questions here. And I get it because, like, listen, we can argue till we're blue in the face about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Like, you guys know where I have him. Obviously, some of you think I'm wrong about having him above Lamar. I had this thought last night watching that game, eating some popcorn after I ate some barbecue. I ate a lot of food yesterday. I was like, can you imagine being a GM of another team who does not have Mahomes or one of these young ascending quarterbacks and be paying your quarterback a boatload of money, right? Like the Dolphins, the Jags, the Eagles. You just go around the Giants, all these teams and watch that and go like, how are we supposed to compete with that? Obviously, the teams in the AFC, I'm paying Deshaun Watson $230 million, and I watched that. Like, those guys are in a different world than my guy. I mean, a different stratosphere. How am I supposed to compete with that? I got no shot. At least if you're the Bengals or the Chargers, you go, listen, when we keep my guy healthy, we think we can. But there are so many other teams paying their quarterback a lot of money that just goes, we'll just wave the white flag when we play you. Because your guy is just in a completely different tier than ours. Like, what they have in their bag, it ain't even a fair fight. So, I think the Eagles got to be thinking that right now. Like, Baker Mayfield, the totality of his contract is so much less money than Jalen Hurts. Would the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, if Howie picked up the phone and called Jason Light, straight up, Baker Mayfield for Jalen Hurts, Jason Light wouldn't even take a meeting. Would not take a meeting. He would say, yeah, not in, hang up. Think about that. Imagine if I would have told you that after 2022. People often say, like, sometimes I'll just scroll through some comments and see, Middlekauff, you're such a flip-flopper. Your opinion's always changing. Well, yeah, football's a stock market. Things change. You see things and you change your opinion. I was really impressed with Jalen Hurts 2 years ago. This isn't politics. My morals and, life standards of the way I view life have not changed in, I would say, 25 years. Kind of embedded in me at 15 years old and have been pretty consistent. If I was a politician, I wouldn't be flip-flopping on much. But when it comes to the stock market or talking about this in football, my opinions change all the time. Like, how would they not? If you watch Baker Mayfield with the Carolina Panthers, I remember watching him against the 49ers 2 years ago. When Matt Rules last year, I'm thinking, like, is this guy going to be in the league? How could you not have had that thought? Beside, like, his family members that had unwavering belief. And then a couple years later, you watch him yesterday and kind of what he's become, and you go, God, this guy's good. Because being good and playing at a high level at sports, like being a star in football, is about doing it, not just doing it once, about doing it over and over and over again. Like, constantly being good. And a lot of guys are just kind of roller coasters. And when you pay roller coasters, you find yourself in compromised situations fast. And listen, you could argue Baker Mayfield is not Mr. Consistent, but they're not paying him like these other guys. So, like, look at the guys that got paid recently. Jalen Hurts, obviously the guys this summer, in Tua and Trevor Lawrence. Tampa, there is no amount of money you could pay Jason Light to even pre-concussion Baker Mayfield for Tua Tagovailoa. Now, a couple years ago, obviously, you would have rather have Trevor Lawrence on the hope of Trevor Lawrence. But I just threw that game on at the gym. And it's like, God, he misses some throws. It's like, Jesus. I just don't get any, like, wow. I don't get any, God, that was just a bunch of dots on that drive for a touchdown. Just constantly missing stuff. It's like, we always make, it's the coaching. They called a quarterback draw on 4th and 1 at the goal line. Okay, we can nip, but there are just constant throws, and Baker just makes them. Doesn't make them all the time. No one's comparing him to Lamar, Josh Allen, or Mahomes, or Brady, or Manning, or Rodgers in his prime. But holy shit, he's better than all these other guys. If I had a team and all things were equal, my roster was like the Eagles, or the Bucks, or the Niners, or the Lions, or whoever, Anyone listening, would you take, factoring in the contract, Baker Mayfield or Jalen Hurts? So we can nitpick and get into all this stuff about the Eagles. Like, that's a major problem for them. Obviously, like we just talked about, the defense. But, like, is their quarterback a high-end guy? It's where I defend Dak all the time. Like, Dak's just been pretty good for a long time. Is he ever going to be the top 5 guy? Of course not. But, like, every single year, you can chalk him somewhere between, like, 8 to 10. Yeah, he might blow in the playoffs, but, like, I know what I'm going to get for the majority of the time. Jalen, like, series to series, I got no clue. And let's face it, he plays his best when he runs around. And he's ran around a little bit more this year than he has in last year, but in his heart of hearts, like, he just wants to be a pocket quarterback. And if I'm Todd Bowles or a guy playing him, fuck yeah, become a top pocket quarterback. The other thing is, when I pay you big money, like, obviously A.J. Brown's on the team for a reason. He's awesome. But, like, what if he's not there? Can you just carry me for a month? And the answer is no, cannot. So this is a question. Is it time to cut ties with Sirianni and Hurts? I told Colin this yesterday when he asked me, would you want to be the head coach of the Jags? Would you want to be the head coach of the Eagles? It's like, I didn't even hesitate. The Eagles, if I'm Bill Belichick. Like, I'm a bright lights guy. Like, the Jags feel like a college team that wouldn't even be a top 5 college team in their own region. Like, think about the region in which they play in. Where would you rank them? Georgia football's bigger. Alabama football's bigger. LSU football's bigger. The Saints are definitely bigger. The Falcons are bigger. They're not the biggest NFL team in their own state. The Dolphins are bigger. And the Bucks, with Gruden and then Brady and these last couple of years with Baker have just been more important. If the Jags disappeared tomorrow and we just inserted some other team and no one would notice. I'm not trying to be a dick. Like, this, it's not personal about me. I've been to Jacksonville a couple times, had a good time when I went there for work, but I just think the franchise is a joke. Now, when it comes to the Eagles, like, listen, they're a well-run franchise. Doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. And now they're in this Sirianni situation where he feels like, I was asked this question last week. Listen, McCarthy might get fired. I just saw today, Lawrence, Liz Frank, he's out for who knows, a long time. Parsons was on a scooter and a boot. Now they probably don't want to put any weight, but I think safe to say he's gonna miss many games, whether that's 2 or 4, but it ain't gonna be 1. McCarthy might get fired. But here's what I know about Mike McCarthy. He can rattle off 12-win seasons and call my plays and coach the quarterback. Sirianni cannot coach the quarterback and cannot call plays. And we watch his decision-making, it feels like, what is going on? Now, because he has talented players on the roster, which he has nothing to do with, like, he's won some games. But, man, I mean, I think he's much closer to Brandon Staley with just some more wins. I really do. And I think the way this is looking right now, I think he's in major trouble. And he was in trouble coming into the season because making the playoffs wouldn't have been it. If he made the playoffs and lost again in the first round, like, he would be gone. I think the only way he keeps his job is like NFC Championship game and look good in that game. So I can't help but feel that Jalen just isn't that good. He shouldn't have been paid. And if I'm being honest, Kelsey held his hand. That's the other problem is, like, it's impossible. Only Jason and the coaching staff knows, like, losing Fletcher Cox on defense is a loss, but he was an aging player, but his veteran leadership mattered a lot. Kelsey was all that, but still playing at an elite level. And he made all the calls. So it's like, how am I supposed to? I heard Schlereth go on this rant about who was the player. Oh, Sam Darnold. And when Sam Darnold was drafted to the New York Jets, Adam Gase was his coach, that they were running the Peyton Manning offense. And Schlereth was like, does everyone realize that there's been one human in the history of the sport that's ran that offense? That's why we call it the Peyton Manning offense. Where other people have ran, whether it's, the Shanahan crew scheme, whether it's the West Coast offense, the Patriot offense, which is pretty complicated. While it doesn't work outside of New England, we saw Matt Castle and Jimmy Garoppolo and Mac Jones a year. Like, other people have run the offense. Asking him to do Peyton Manning stuff was moronic and obviously failed miserably. But when you look, I guess where I was ranting and raving about this is you could manipulate the offense because you had this genius center who could do half the stuff that most quarterbacks have to do. He's just not very good in the pocket. He just really isn't. He doesn't feel comfortable. I don't know if he doesn't see it well. He doesn't throw a great ball. I'm not just trying to kick him when he's down, but last year down the stretch, he looked terrible. And to me this year, he had some moments. I thought he played decently well in the Atlanta game because he was running. Look, Lamar, what makes him so dynamic is when he's on, this is what pissed me off about that AFC Championship game, is he's a really good thrower. You watch Jaden Daniels and you go, wait, this guy's a runner too? Because in the pocket, he could dominate. He's just throwing dots and dimes and just seam routes and out routes. It's this is awesome. And then at any moment, he can take off. Now, he needs to learn to slide. But it's Jalen can't really do that. I don't blame them for paying him because what were you supposed to do? Coming off Super Bowl where he outplayed Mahomes? But maybe it's just an all-time outlier season. West Coast guy, living in KC for most of my life. As a Chiefs fan, I've been very frustrated with the lack of offensive efficiency over the last year and 4 games. Well, you did last year, you won the Super Bowl, and this year you're 4-0. But listen, you know what? Apple and Amazon, I guess they have down quarters too, even when they're making historic amounts of money. I've thought about this, and I've come to the conclusion that I came to over the last year and 4 games that Matt Nagy has been the OC, and it hasn't been the same. Do you think this offense is the reason why Mahomes hasn't been the same player since Eric Bieniemy left and Matt Nagy took over? I find it hard to believe Mahomes just woke up one day and started looking like second-year Zach Wilson. Their offensive players were way better 5 years ago. I mean, they had Tyreek Hill. So you remove Tyreek Hill, and their offensive line, they benched the second rounder yesterday. The other dude started. So their offensive line has been in flux. Their starting running back broke his leg. Their best receiver, Rashee Rice, is good, is not playing. So they're depending on Worthy, a rookie, 35-year-old Kelsey, who kind of saves himself for the end of the season, and a left tackle position that is just in question. Do you watch? What else could they be doing? That's my question. What else could they be doing? I've seen Eric Bieniemy leave. Been pretty embarrassing for him in Washington last year, was really bad, and at UCLA is even worse. Now, listen, I'm friends with Nagy. I'm not acting like Matt Nagy's Bill Walsh or Andy Reid here, but if Andy Reid thought it was a problem, he would just take over. If he felt like they were leaving a lot of points out there. The other thing is, and this happened with when Eric was there, and this happens now, is Mahomes does throw some bad picks sometimes. Deep down at his core, he's got a little Favre in him. And they just don't have the offensive talent right now. Because they've invested in the defense. And they're winning. So I saw a story today that they're going to be sniffing around some of these wide receivers. If they could trade for Amari Cooper, that would make a lot of sense. I love touchdowns. Tutties, taking it to the house, in for 6. I call them tugs. Whenever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, We do not care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many touchdowns will be in a game. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Ready to do a touchdown dance on your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN. New customers get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. I got a question for the bag. I have a gambling take that I wanted your opinion on. Live betting the Chiefs as an underdog might be the best bet in football. I actually clicked off. It has worked the past 2 Super Bowls and now 3 of the 4 games this season. I told my buddies that the Chiefs at +2.5 is the equivalent to a player 11 versus if you're a blackjack player with showing 11 versus dealer 6. I guess my question is, do you agree? Well, basically, so you're getting them as dogs when they're down in a game. So if they're down 7-0, 10-0, and you can get them at +150 or, like you said, +4. The Bills were like that against the Arizona Cardinals week 1. You get them at like +175 when they were down 17-3. It's going to backfire in some of these games. It's not always going to work. Like, is this team more likely to go? How many games are there in the season? So if you get 13-4 or 11-6. And I'd say they feel more likely to win 11 or 12 than 13 or 14. Just because, it's tough on their offense. And eventually, like, you're going to have a couple defensive injuries. You're just going to have some bad games on defense, and that's part of football. So it's going to work a decent amount of time during the season, assuming that they give up early leads and you can live bet them right away. But as someone who is live bet for a long time, sometimes it bites you in the ass. Sometimes it bites you in the ass hard. Because when you hammer someone down 10-0 and then you look up and the halftime score is 24-3, it sucks. So it's exhilarating doing a live bet. And listen, you can never go wrong live betting Mahomes and Andy Reid. But you're 75% this year. You could have a 2-game stretch where it blows up in your face twice. I have to look at I don't know who they're playing the next couple weeks. Gotta getting a lot of Eagles people. It's infuriating watching our defense outside of the Super Bowl year with Gannon when our D-line had a historic sack numbers. This defense consistently gets shredded, especially in the air. Why does it feel like our corners give receivers a 10-yard cushion on every play? I know Fangio, did I even say his name? I know Fangio takes a bend but don't break approach, but we still give up big plays, and it feels like we've had this issue for as long as I can remember. Is it an organizational philosophy or a defensive strategy? Well, I think this is a defensive strategy for Vic. Not a big blitzer. He's going to be very dependent on his front guys making noise. And if his front guys aren't getting pressure, you're in trouble. Now, 1 touchdown over the rookie, I would take Mitchell on my team right now. He has got a chance to be a really, really good corner. But I'm sorry, like Mike Evans on a rookie, I'm taking Mike Evans, right? So you're just going to have to tip your hat on that one. Is he still a high-end player? The answer is no. Linebacking play, I think, is more than questionable. And if your defensive line is just going to underachieve, you're just not going to be as good. I know it's still early in college football, but do you think Ryan Williams, that's the 17-year-old player from Alabama that caught the game-winning touchdown, would be a first-round pick next year? And if yes, do you think players should be draft eligible sooner? I would say him. I think the Ohio State player, Ohio State has a true freshman, last name Smith, I think. He had an incredible one-handed touchdown. I think both guys would be lock. I'm saying lock top 20 picks. Now, when you're 17 years old, even for as awesome as he is, it would be a challenge in the pros with the physicality. But yes, he would. Both guys as true freshmen would be first round picks. I think the NFL and the business model is great. Let Ryan Williams become a superstar in college. Then when he gets to the pros, everyone's been talking about him for 3 years. The NBA is a great example. They have no feeder system that matters anymore. We don't watch college basketball like we once did. So when guys get there, I was watching the NBA draft because I'm a sucker for drafts. Hell, I watched the baseball draft. When I don't know anyone in your NBA draft, and I'm not like, Zach Lowe here or, Bill Simmons or Russillo, but I follow sports pretty closely. And when your first 10 picks are guys I couldn't point out of a lineup beside like two guys, you got problems. That's not the case with football. Because in football, when you look at the top 20 picks, they're all mainly coming from huge programs. They've been major players for years at those programs. Quarterbacks, even if they transferred, they become stars. Like the NFL has the best thing going with college football. They don't have to pay for it. And they have this rule of 3 years. And for most guys, I think it is fair because of the physicality of the size of these guys. In basketball and baseball, it's not as physically demanding in terms of like you take a 17, 18-year-old defensive lineman and put him in the pros. Like you make a huge jump. Listen, when I was in college football, we used to take pictures and you see it sometimes online of like guys their freshman year, guys their sophomore year, guys their junior year. They just showed it at USC when they were playing that LSU game of just what this offseason meant for a lot of their players. Guys going from 230 pounds to 265 pounds. So I think from a health standpoint, it does have benefits. And I think from a business standpoint, it's the best thing they got going. Let that sport, which is the second biggest sport in America by a wide margin, because the NFL is in first by several laps. College football is second right now. Let them create stars. And they're doing it. And it's working perfectly. So I would never advocate changing that. And I'm glad that it is the way it is. I'm a religious listener and fan of yours from the very start. JK was in early. I've worked in hedge funds my entire career. Part of being a good investor is recognizing good ideas in other people. Your best idea over all these years was bet on Kalen DeBoer. You gave simple, articulate history on him before the Washington, Texas game last year. He's just a winner wherever he goes. The simplest ideas are often the best ideas. See, the fucking hedge fund guy thinks I'm a genius. I never bet on sports until this year. I opened up a DraftKings account to bet big on Alabama to win the Natty because Kalen wins wherever he goes. God, this guy, heck yeah. Did you follow your own advice and bet on Kalen? What's your take on Bama? I loved him. Let's rewind. I obviously Fresno State guy, so I've been following his career, and that's how I really knew about him, is when he was the offensive coordinator there, and then he became the head coach. But at Washington, when I saw what he did by year 2, it was like, God, this is insane. I didn't, not that I wasn't bullish at Alabama, but he gets there, the transfer portal, he loses OC. Listen, if he would have gone to Alabama this year and gone 10-2, like that would have been, damn, that would have been a really good start. Like, I don't think winning the national championship the year after Saban leaves was the expectation. Saban, I think, has told people behind the scenes that last year is one of the most incredible things they've ever done at Alabama. That team wasn't as good, and they were on the doorstep of being in the national championship. They beat Georgia and had Michigan on the ropes. But after watching on Saturday night, it's like, I should have listened to myself. Now, I don't pretend to know as much about their roster as I did Washington's, but clearly they're good. And this young wide receiver is a superstar. He has Jalen Milroe looking really good. obviously defensively, they're just going to have I mean, think how much bigger and physical they looked in Georgia. That to me is what's crazy. Like they felt in that first half, like, are they better on defense than Georgia? And the answer clearly was yes. Like, John, what about the fourth quarter? Yeah, when guys are kind of zoning out. I got Bama 12-1 to win the Natty. That's a good bet. I also think if we're just talking numbers and logic and just uh, setup in terms of the national championship now, it was easier to win the national championship before at the best of four, right? Like Alabama right now would be the 1 seed, right? So they would only have to play, they would get Texas. Maybe Texas gets upset in the 2-3 game and they play, Miami and then the winner of Texas, Ohio State. It was just a knockdown, drag out game. And they get to beat Miami by 20 points. Where in the 12-team playoff, even though they would get a bye and wouldn't have to play all the games, it still is a longer path to the national. There's just more variables, is what I would say. We're going to see a crazy upset, a team at home getting beat in the playoffs. It's college football. But yeah, good call on you listening to me. Mailbag. Do you think Carson Beck is overrated? If he can barely handle Kentucky and now the Alabama defense, why would anyone take him in the first round? I don't know how anyone could watch him play and think first rounder. And I think there's a balance here. That just sounds like, I'm not talking shit. I don't think the guy's a scrub. I think the guy's a second day pick. How many human beings do you know that have just been like, yeah, I was drafted in the second or third round of the NFL? Most people that know an individual that was drafted in the second or third round of the NFL, that's by far the most athletic person in your life. Right? Hey, my buddy, 50 years old, second round pick by the Jets in 1992. Everyone wants to talk to that guy. Hey, this is my guy Jay. He was a third round pick by the Patriots in 2003. Seriously, he played with Tom Brady? Third round pick? So it's like you get drafted on day 2. Think how many great players who were drafted on day 2. At quarterback, Drew Brees, second round pick. Derek Carr's been made $250 million, but starting in the NFL for 10 years. Jimmy Garoppolo started in a Super Bowl, second round pick. Russell Wilson, third round pick. There's nothing wrong with getting drafted on the second round. Think how many great position players think of all the wide receivers, right? DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, AJ Brown, Shady McCoy, Deshaun Jackson. I mean, great. Fred Warner was a third round pick. He's the defensive player. He's like the best linebacker of his generation. So when you say it, and I said it online because, I was having a few cold ones and, fired off a couple tweets from my guy, Kalen DeBoer and Roll Tide Roll. And people are like, you're overreacting to one game. It's like, guys, I'm just watching this guy play. And now if you wanted to trade back in at the end of the first round, listen, I'm not going to call you the village idiot, but all I've seen, Mel Kiper and all these guys have him top 5 ranked prospect, potential number 1 overall pick. We're just not watching the same player or watching the same sport. I watch the NFL for a living, and I know what works and what doesn't. And the player he is right now, if you were to draft him in the top 5, you would 100% be fired fast. Because it's not like he's got some incredible arm. He's clearly not some great athlete. He's not Mr. Powerful Runner. I don't even see how we could have an argument that he's a better prospect than Deion's son, Shedeur. I think Shedeur is in a different tier. Quinn Ewers, there's an argument to be made. He could be the number 1 overall pick. I think we got to pump the brakes. He's been hurt back-to-back years. So if I'm going to take a guy number 1 overall pick who's been hurt constantly in college, that's pretty risky. I mean, that keeps me up at night. Who else am I missing? Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers. Can I get Jalen Milroe in the second or third round? I think I might rather have Jalen Milroe at pick 50 than I would Carson Beck at pick 10. I know that. But there was a report today, I forget by who, that doing research, this is the least talented first round in years. Like most drafts in a first round have, on average, if you just get the 32 teams, like somewhere between 20 and 24 guys as first round value, right? Just because there's 32 picks in the first round doesn't mean there are 32 graded first rounders on the whole with NFL teams. Now, different teams grade guys differently, but you guys get the gist of this. And the report today is the number for most teams is actually closer to like 10 to 12. So that kind of speaks to one, we had this weird 2020 that did not count for any of these guys' eligibility. It's just kind of thrown everything out of whack. Within a couple years, we'll be back to the normal kind of what word am I looking for here? I would just the normal 3-year cycle, 3 and 4-year cycle. Right now, I mean, how often do you turn on college football on a Saturday and be like, 26-year-old, 6-year redshirt senior? You're like, how long is this guy? Oklahoma State played Utah, the game Cam Rising got hurt. The quarterbacks, and Stuckey mentioned this, and they mentioned it on the broadcast, that their combined age was 49 years old. 49 years old. Arch Manning is like 19 years old. The receiver at Bama is 17. Playing a guy that's 25 years old. That's a pretty big age gap. I don't have much in common as a 25-year-old with a 17-year-old. But yeah, to me, Carson Beck. Listen, I got a lot of respect for Georgia. Obviously, what Kirby's done, they are an elite program. But I think we gotta be real about what we witnessed. It's like their team's not as good as it has been. And let's face it, like they've just lost. Think how many players they've lost over like a 3-year span. Even Saban had some dips in his 6 national championships at Alabama. He didn't win them every single year. I don't even think, did he ever even go back to back? So like you're going to have a year where you've had a 3-year stretch where you've lost all the defensive guys. And then last year you finally lost the offensive guys and some offensive linemen. So you lost your 2 best weapons by a mile. I mean, Brock Bowers is one of the most talented guys in the history of the program. McConkey, your best receiver. Pickens, who was a big time receiver for him. It's like, well, the quarterback. Well, doesn't look like a guy that can carry the squad to me. 26-year-old Lions fan. Obviously living through some tough years. I love Stafford, but can't argue with the trade that stacked our team with picks. Given where the Lions and Rams are this year, it'd be fun if we propose the exact same trade. Goff and picks for Stafford. It could put the Lions over the top. You want them back? Over the top and win more Super Bowls, and it would let the Rams rebuild under McVay. It'll never happen. This is great. I think it would be hard for McVay because he's at the point now, how wealthy he is. He's already won the Super Bowl. He's just trying so desperately to win every game. And they got their picks back now, so he's not as consumed with trying to restock the cupboard. But it would be the right move. In no fault of his own. I mean, they tried desperately to win that game with the Bears. But when you just have that many injuries, I don't. Bill Walsh and Vince Lombardi, you're going to have a problem. And Stafford's, pressing the issue. They're just so dependent on 5-yard plays. Matt Stafford is a much better player than Jared Goff, and Jared Goff's good. So would you do Jared Goff for Matt Stafford? The problem is like this year's one. Well, the Lions would probably be a lock to be in the NFC Championship game again. So it's like, okay, we're getting Jared Goff back and pick, let's say 29. And we find our way to 7-ish wins with all the injuries, 7-8 wins. We're picking 15. And we're going to end up losing more games because Goff can't lose. Actually, if I get Goff, I'm going to lose more games. I would probably need more if I'm the Rams. I would probably need a 1 and a 2. And again, I would have to basically wave the white flag on the season. And I don't think McVay turned down Amazon, who is paying Herbstreit or offered him, 15, $18 million a year to just suck. He's desperately trying to win. He said last year winning those games and getting the playoffs helped kind of, restart that passion that he had lost the previous year. That's the thing that I always get worried about with McVay is like, if he ever wanted to, these networks would hire him for like, if he wanted to next year, Amazon would just get rid of Herbstreit and hire him in a heartbeat, which I hope doesn't happen. But I watched the Miami Virginia Tech Hail Mary, and my only thought, where are all the NFL grade cameras? I swear, every time I watch college football games, I see a noticeable difference in the clarity and the slow motion replay. It's always blurry. I hope the refs are getting better video when they watch replays. There is a lot of money in college football. Get better video. It's a good question. I've never thought about it like that. Obviously, the replays we had on that moment, there's no way you can come to a conclusion anyway. Let's face it, sitting here today, Monday afternoon, we have no clue what happened. I have no clue who caught the ball, whether it was inbounds, out of bounds, was it a touchdown, was it an interception, was it a drop? No fucking clue. And you know what? Neither did they. Which is why I think it's kind of crazy that they called a touchdown on the field and then they went to the replay and they canceled the touchdown. Miami got lucky because once the call on the field with the information that we had, assuming they're getting the same information, I don't know how you overturned the call, but they did. It felt a little David Stern, like when all else fails, just go with the Lakers. Like when all else fails, what are you going to do? Some Virginia Tech team that's going to win 6-7 games, or Miami, that's one of the biggest brands in college football and we want in the playoffs. Let's go with Miami. That's kind of what felt like what happened, which I don't really have an issue with. But I also think this, in the NFL, ESPN just has the one game, right? And they put a lot of money into it. They're paying Aikman $20 million. They're paying Buck $10 million. They're paying Manning's a ton. They're broadcast. They're all in. And CBS and Fox and NBC, like they take the NFL as the most valuable property they all have. It's the most important television show they show all year long. They would cancel everything to keep that. Where ESPN, I'm pretty sure was calling that game. Think how many college football games they do. Right? I mean, they do a ton on ESPN, on ESPN2, on ABC, on ESPNU. I mean, they're calling, I couldn't even guess. You'd have to tell me how many college football games there are on a weekend. Are they doing 35, 40% of them when you count all their networks? Because even Fox, like, okay, Fox has Fox and FS1, right? CBS and CBS Sports. Like, they're just doing 2. Now, over the course of the day, that's like 6 or 5. ESPN's doing 4 games on ESPN, 4 games on ESPN2, all the games on ESPN Plus. I think they got another channel. ABC is also on, their own Disney. It's all under the same umbrella. I wonder if they just kind of skimp. You notice it now on just these broadcasts in general. Definitely some of these shows on their channels, like they've gone cheap. Things that they never could have flown, fly now. Mistakes happen all the time. Well, why do you think that happens? Because instead of paying 4 producers $100,000 each, they try to get 1 producer for $80,000 and then hire a bunch of interns. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's how mistakes happen. And when you're going to hold yourself at a really high level, right? It's like, well, do we need to buy all these cameras or can we get away with it? Because in the NFL, they don't. Like you said, they have a camera at every single angle and obviously better cameras. Well, of course they do. They care more about the NFL. It's impossible to care the same about college football, the individual college football games. So I think that's a very, very fair assessment by you. I'm so tired of offenses gaining 30 to 50 yards with ticky-tack defensive pass interference calls, especially getting a first down on the 1 yard line. The deck is already stacked up against the defense. I would propose that the consequence of defensive PIs is giving the offense the option for an automatic first down or a 15-yard penalty from the line of scrimmage. That way, the offense can still keep a drive alive, and the defense has a serious consequence. I'd even be okay with more strictly enforcing the call with less severe penalty. I think a good example is, because I think the offensive guy would tell you, let's use the Saints Atlanta game. Derek Carr tries to do the Drew Brees touchdown where he jumps over the line of scrimmage. Barely even gets to the center's ass. Doesn't get close. The Falcons have to call a timeout. They run the ball, I think, the next down, get stuffed, call another timeout, and then they finally score. So Atlanta gets the ball back like a minute, no timeouts. And it was clearly going to be a lot more difficult for them to just get into field goal range than it was against the Eagles defense that day. I know they had to score a touchdown, but the Saints defense, it was going to be difficult. And then they get a 30-yard play on a pass interference, which was a pass interference. But it's like, so you're telling me the game is decided on the PI? Now, I think the Falcons would say, well, if he doesn't tackle him, Mooney, the wide receiver, is going to catch the ball. He smoked a wide receiver. It's like, yeah, I see both sides, just using that as an example. Where I hate is a severely underthrown ball and the wide receiver just stops and the DB runs through him. It's like that was a terrible pass. That was not a good pass. Like Cousins, it looked like a decent pass. So I've always been in favor of automatic 15-yard penalties. And I think we've talked about this before in the mailbag. People have DM'd the defensive holding should be at the point of the spot. So if it's 3rd and 12 and I hold at 6 yards, it should not be an automatic first down. It should then be 3rd and 6. I get PI. Maybe there are severities of PI, but that's more difficult. Like holding's the same way, right? It's a big penalty. 10-yard move you back. Same thing with intentional grounding. I do think it's fair to say the severity of defensive holding and defensive PI is too punitive, too extreme. So could you just go 15-yard penalty? Because that would have made a big difference in the Falcons game if that was the case. Maybe he still hits, 60-yarder. Maybe they don't get in range. 58, I think exactly it was, but which is a big moment for Arthur Blank, who just got inducted into the Falcons Hall of Fame. I mean, how often do you get to have a Ring of Honor Hall of Famer who owns a team, watch your team get a massive victory? And now they got the edge, 56-55 in the career matchups.